So if you're struggling with anxiety, you've probably came up with this concept of acceptance. You've probably heard people talk about acceptance and you may be wondering, how does acceptance make this go away? It can't be that easy. There must be something else you're missing to make anxiety go away. Or you may have even tried to accept and realize all your anxiety symptoms are still there. This is one of the most common concerns we hear with individuals struggling with anxiety. It was something I struggled with myself, but once I really understood what was happening, really understood, is acceptance all that you need? If so, how does it work? It truly changed my trajectory of recovery. And if you can understand just a few principles, it really changes anxiety recovery and it will change your life. So without further ado, let's crack into the video. So I remember when I was struggling with anxiety, I was struggling with these really intrusive thoughts. I was having these feelings of unreality, what we call derealization, depersonalization. I was feeling these terrible symptoms that were so terrifying that I was convinced there was something actually physically wrong with me, and that if I didn't get it fixed within days, that wasn't gonna be good. And I even had these emotions, these feelings of numbness. And I remember when I was struggling with this, I had a lot of individuals kind of tell me, Shaan, just accept it. Just accept it to be there. And I remember during that time, when people would tell me that, I would kind of take it with this attitude of, they're just telling me to deal with it. They're just telling me to just deal with these symptoms, to learn to live with these symptoms. But I told myself that, like, look, they just don't understand. If they just knew how intense these symptoms were, if they just knew how debilitating these symptoms were, they would understand that there's no sane person out there that could like deal with this. It was too debilitating and it was too strong. And so the idea of acceptance kind of gets played around a lot during an individual's journey when they're struggling with anxiety. I know it was for me. See, I made the assumption that people telling me to accept my anxiety, that somehow I was just gonna deal with the anxiety for the rest of my life. But I didn't understand the mechanics of anxiety. And here's what I mean. Most people, when they're trying to fix something, they try to take something to make something go away. What I mean by that is, like, imagine you have a headache, right? You have a headache, you take an aspirin. You're taking something to make it go away. Or let's say you got a sports injury. You start putting ice, you start resting it. Even resting and putting ice is still doing something about something. And so you kind of use that same ideology, that same logic for anxiety. You're like, okay, well, I'm feeling anxious, I need to do something. But what I didn't understand is that anxiety works on a whole different paradigm. And what I mean is, anytime you try to do something about the anxiety, it actually reinforces the anxiety. So when I was struggling with these physical symptoms, when I was feeling feelings of unreality, when I was getting these intrusive thoughts, when I was feeling these emotions that came with anxiety, I was always trying to do something to make it go away. And so the idea of acceptance by itself is actually not enough. You really need to understand the mechanics of anxiety. And here's what I mean. See, when somebody's struggling with anxiety, what happens is there's a certain part of the nervous system that's designed to essentially prevent threats. We call that the fight or flight response. When somebody's experiencing anxiety, that fight or flight response is there, and it's an innate mechanism designed to protect you. So there's really two ways that you can go about it. You can either fight off a threat, because most of our threats prehistorically were predatory, or so either we run away or we fight it. And so what happens is that when your body's in this constant fight or flight state, your body's producing adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, and what people are experiencing, the feelings of unreality, the physical symptoms, the intrusive thoughts, it's all a response of these hormones being released. And so what happens is that these hormones are being released in response to a perceived threat. And what happens is people start experiencing palpitations, they start experiencing dizziness, they start getting these intrusive thoughts, and they respond in fear. Now, when they respond in fear, or they try to respond and try to make this go away, what they don't realize is that that's actually reinforcing the cycle. So you have the fight or flight response that's producing these offsets, these symptoms that are offsets. The symptoms are scaring the individual, and because it's scaring the individual, it's reinforcing the cycle. So when people are struggling with anxiety, they're in this cycle. So what do they end up saying? Well, they say, okay, well, if you just allow your symptoms to be there, what happens is you break the cycle. Now, what happens with people when they're struggling with anxiety? When they're struggling with anxiety, they're always trying to do something to make it go away, but that's reinforcing the cycle. And if they just give a break, what happens is that breaks the cycle over time. What most people end up doing is they end up using this acceptance as a sophisticated form of avoidance. So think about it this way, right? If somebody tells you, well, just accept your anxiety, regardless of how you feel, just accept it. And you say, okay, I'm accepting it. Okay, but it's still there. Well, that's not true acceptance, right? You're not accepting it. Your acceptance is conditional. You're deep down still using acceptance as a sophisticated form of avoiding how you're feeling. The goal of acceptance isn't to make yourself feel better in the moment. The goal of acceptance is so that you give your nerves a chance to rest. Right now it's sensitized. When you allow the symptoms to be there without constantly trying to fight it or fix it or analyze it, what it does is that it just gives your nerves like a chance to breathe, a chance to rebuild, a chance to relax. What happens is over time is that it comes back to baseline. You get out of this fight or flight response. So what most people end up doing is they try to accept and they realize it doesn't work, and then they start focusing on other things. But if you can accept it, if you can accept that this is your now, it's not your forever, focus on what we call long-term freedom, then what happens is that these symptoms end up dying down over time. See, what happens is right now your symptoms have a lot of momentum. So even if you start accepting, these symptoms won't go away overnight. You've been stressed out about this problem for quite some time. Even though you accept, it's gonna take a little bit longer for the symptoms to actually die down, for your nerves to have a chance to rest. So as you do that, over time, the symptoms go away. So what we always talk about, what we always say is focus on what we call long-term freedom. Don't focus on anxiety in the moment. Focus on how do I want to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now? How do I want my anxiety to be in certain situations? If you focus on long-term freedom, then that's how people start overcoming. And if you really want to know how to overcome, how to really know the steps to full recovery, I'll put a link down below. This is a link to essentially a report that I've written step by step, how to overcome anxiety. Part of it is acceptance, but part of it is also understanding the mechanics. You really have to know why you're experiencing certain symptoms. If you're experiencing heart palpitations and it convinces you that you're having a heart attack, acceptance just isn't gonna work. You need to understand the mechanics of anxiety. So the report's down below, it's absolutely free. It's exactly what I do to share with my clients, step by step, how to overcome. And I'm giving this out to you just because I know I can't help everybody. So I still wanna show you steps on how to overcome. So what are some action steps that you can take right now to focus on overcoming anxiety? Well, step one is obviously get everything ruled out by your doctor. Make sure they say it's anxiety. Now the next step is really understanding the mechanics of anxiety, what we said before. And like I said, that report down below is really gonna show you really the mechanics of anxiety. Why are you experiencing physical symptoms? Why are you feeling derealization, depersonalization? Why are you feeling these intrusive thoughts? Why are you feeling these emotions like numbness or impending senses of doom or anything like that? Really understand the mechanics of anxiety. Then the third thing is, don't even focus on acceptance. Just forget it. Focus on what we call allowing it to be there. Just allow your symptoms to be there. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to analyze it. Don't try to judge it. Just allow the symptoms to be there. What we find with individuals who are struggling with anxiety is that their avoidance behavior is so strong, they've been trying so long to get rid of these feelings that it's so natural for them. It's almost automatic. It's instinctive for them. What we say is now, moving forward, just allow the symptoms to be there. Don't try to fight it, don't try to fix it. Acceptance is gonna be too hard, so just allow it. So how do you go about this? Well, the best way is just to allow the symptoms to be there, not to feel better, not to make the feelings go away. The goal should be, can I allow the symptoms to be there while I still focus on everything else I need to do during the day? That's all you need to do. So allow the symptoms to be there, and focus on continuing living as normally as possible. Now, will your symptoms still be there? Yes, temporarily though. Over time, you're gonna notice as time goes on is that eventually it'll go away. That's why we say allow it just for the sake of allowing. Don't allow it with any conditions. Don't allow it to make it go away. It going away happens as a consequence. It can't happen as an end goal. Now, if you wanna know a little bit more, if you really wanna see success stories, if you really wanna see people that were just like you, that have fully come out, that have genuinely fully come out, that were struggling with the same symptoms as you, what I'll do is I'll put a link down below this is a link to my private Facebook group. In this group, I'm putting even more exclusive content, showing you step by step, how do you get out of this? And also there's individuals there that have actually fully recovered that are now helping other members as well. And there's people that are on their journey. These are people that are serious about overcoming. They're not interested in coping. They're not interested in managing. They're not interested in just going on there every time they just have a little bit of anxiety and scaring the group. These are people that are focused on fully overcoming, regaining their lives, and living as freely as possible. Now, if that's you, what you want to do is hit the link down below, and it's going to ask you 3 questions. It's very important that you answer these 3 questions to the best of your ability. We want people in the group, but we don't want to compromise the integrity of the group. If you've been on any forum before, you see that a lot of times these forums can be quite toxic. People are story topping each other, people are scaring each other. There's really no benefit. This is a group that's a little bit more guided. We're showing you step by step how to fully overcome. So if that's you, hit the link down below. I'll see you inside.